split on the profit?
Mayor, it's 4:31. We're live. Sorry, I don't have a mic.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this Thursday, November 1st, City Commission Joint Work Session with the Palm Beach County School Board to order, and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell, absent or not here yet. Commissioner Omari Harding.
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
If everyone would please rise for the pledge, led by Commissioner Hardy.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome, everyone. I am so excited to have you all here. Thank you so much for being here. I would like to, well, we just had a roll call, so we know who all of we are. But it probably would be best if everyone else got a formal introduction. And I would just remind my fellow commissioners, as it is a work session, if you could still, as we're being recorded, just wait to be recognized before questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here in my amazing city of Lake Worth and to be able to talk to you guys about my favorite topic in the world, which is education. I want to take a moment really quickly to make sure that all of our amazing staff gets introduced who are in the room. So first, we'll probably go down here and have Keith and Dr. Robinson introduce themselves. But then if possible, I'd like the rest of the staff in the room to stand up and tell us their name and where they work, because I think you'll be amazed at how many people are here, but I also want you to get to know the people that work so hard every day on your schools. Thank you. Oh, and I'm Erica Whitfield, your school board member, one of them in Lake Worth. Thank you.
And good afternoon. Keith Oswald, Deputy Superintendent, Chief of Schools, and I want to thank you, Mayor, and for you all to have us here today. As a former longtime principal here in Lake Worth, it's great to be back. So.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Deborah Robinson, Vice Chair, Palm Beach County School Board, and I own part of Lake Worth.
Juan Ruiz, Assistant City Manager, Lake Worth High School alum, class of 95.
Hi, I'm Pamela Ryan. I am the city attorney for tonight. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
All right, guys. Somebody start.
Jeff Pegg, Instructional Superintendent in the South Region. Glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
Nicole Patterson, Principal at Home.
And R.C. Gonzalez, Principal at South Reed Elementary.
Alvin Sims, Principal, Lake Worth High School.
Mark Howard, Chief of Performance Accountability.
Ed
Chair, Instructional Superintendent.
Howard Esper, Instructional Superintendent, South Region.
Maham Mansour, Planner at the Planning Department.
Hi, I'm Kathy Villavicencio. I'm a specialist at the district as well.
Denise Sinod, Principal at Barton Elementary.
Carla De La Cruz, Single School Culture Coordinator at Barton Elementary.
Hi, I'm Jason Link, Manager, School Enrollment and Demographics.
Hi, I'm MJ Steele, Director for the Department of Early Childhood.
Hi, Kate McMahon, Manager with the Department of Early Childhood.
Oh, hi. I think I was a school board member, but my name is Regina. I like to be called Reggie. I'm the founder and CEO for the Children Act, and we have 5 programs here in Lake Worth.
Elena Villani, the Principal of Highland Elementary.
Hi, Frances Fry, Assistant Principal at Highland Elementary.
Erin Walsh, Assistant Principal at Highland Elementary.
Mark Easton, Lake Worth Herald, and 1972 Lake Worth graduate. and before that, Barton and Lake Worth Junior
Well, thank you, everyone.
Mark wins for most local.
Yes, exactly.
How would you like to go forward? Is it okay if we have Dr. Robinson and I just say a couple words and then
Yes.
we'll go into the presentation?
I would love that.
Okay, Dr. Robinson, do you want to start first? Or do you want me to? Okay. All right, so what I wanted to talk about really briefly before we get started on the education PowerPoint that I'm going to go over today is just kind of how we got into this room and so many things that have happened that brought us here. So first of all, this started with Mayor Pam working hard to try to figure out how we could work with our principals and with the city and to try to improve education here in the city. So what we've been doing is we've been in a very informal task force for the last couple of years, working to try to see what we could do to improve education. We had some ideas, but in the last year, I've really put a lot of time in seeing what are the best ways for communities to work with their schools to make them better. We have some really great examples here in Palm Beach County of amazing things that are happening. And so today, what my plan is to bring to you a little bit about the state of education here in Lake Worth. I want to talk about how your schools are doing, the ones that we have here, the improvements that we've made, some of the great things that are happening really briefly. And then I want to talk about some ideas, very, just a couple of ideas of ways that we can improve, hopefully ideas that the city can embrace to move forward hand in hand with the school district to really make Lake Worth schools everything that we know that they can be. I think there is just so much talent in this room, so many people here that have come together to work for the kids who they just care about so much. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to work better with the city and to make this a reality for our students. So that's where I'm going to leave my talk. Also, I just wanted to say really briefly, my daughter's in the back of the room. She is also a Lake Worth student. We live here in the city, and I'm just very proud to call this place home. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to, just in response to that too, what we were able to do is to come up with a lot of similar things that and challenges that we faced here as a community. But I felt very much so that at the time, and still to this day, but growing up in New York, it was different. The cities actually operated the schools. So there was a direct interaction between the cities and the schools. It was very strange after becoming mayor that we didn't have more involvement, with the schools, helping them on different things and being an extra set of hands for the different schools in so many different ways. So I wanted to try to just open up dialogue because it didn't exist at all within the city for a very long period of time. So that was a start. And I was a bit naive getting into it, but now we've really clearly identified a lot of different things at this point, and we need to take the next step. So having you all here today is hopefully the start of a very lengthy conversation, and more importantly, a very wonderful relationship. Dr. Robinson, would you like?
Well, I know that Mrs. Whitfield says she lives in the city of Lake Worth, talks about Lake Worth all the time, and so I'm actually, even though part of my district encompasses some of Lake Worth, in this initiative, I'm following her lead and adding support to her because I know she's put a lot of time and energy into this, and I think it's great work. And so I'm just here in support and to add my little voice to it.
Thank you.
And she's actually done a lot of work that I'm trying to desperately copy. So I am following what she's been doing in Riviera Beach. So she's going to talk to us a little bit later on when we get to that point about the work that she's been doing and possibly some ideas of things that we could do here in Lake Worth that would follow along what they're doing in Riviera that's been successful. So would you like me to sit here or stand there to present?
Whichever you feel more comfortable.
Actually, I really want to stand. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, like I said, education in Lake Worth. This is my favorite topic. One of the things that we're going to be doing going forward, just so you know, is all of the principals that are here have very kindly agreed to come to the city commission meetings to really talk to you about each of their schools. I think what we're going to do is try to set up one day, possibly a month, where they can come in and do a presentation to open up your meetings, possibly 10 minutes like I usually do. I think what'll be better about that, and I'll talk about this more later, is that then you'll get an opportunity to really hear from them on how their schools are doing. Today, I'm just going to go over really briefly on the individual schools, so you won't get as much information as I would like you to have, but hopefully a brief enough snapshot so that you can get some idea of what the schools are like here in Lake Worth, and then you'll get a more detailed information from them later. So let's talk about School District of Palm Beach County. This school district is amazing. We're the 10th biggest in the country. We're an absolutely huge place, and things, they don't always move so fast. But over the last few years, we were able to come up with a strategic plan, which I'll talk about in just a second. And we updated our vision and our mission. And the reason that is so important is we did actually have a change in leadership recently. Our superintendent left, and we got a new superintendent. So we went from Dr. Vosa to Dr. Fenoy. They were both really along the same mindset. And so the thing that I think is so amazing is a lot of times when you see a change in leadership, you'll see a change in the direction of the district. And that did not happen here. One of the other amazing things we have is having Keith Oswald as our new deputy superintendent and formerly as our CAO. We've been able to keep the direction of the district continuing to move forward. Also, this past year, your school board didn't change at all, which is kind of amazing. So there's 7 of us, 4 of us were up for election, all 4 were re-elected without opposition, except for Dr. Robinson, who won recently, and we're all going to be brought in November. Just in 20 days, we're going to be sworn in again. So you'll have us for the next 2 years. The school board will stay the same. So I want you to see the continuity of your district through this. So our vision and our mission, as I said, they've stayed the same for the last few years. The main part of our vision that I want you to know is that all learners will reach their highest potential. We believe in the success of all the students that we have here, all 190,000 plus of them. We think that they have the ability to do well, and I think that the reason that we're so important is that crucial role that we play in our communities on getting our students ready for the world. So the second thing is our mission, and that is a world-class education with excellence and equity to empower each student to reach his or her highest potential. No matter who you are, we want you to be the best person that you can be there. So again, I said the strategic 5-year plan. The thing that is most important for you all to notice here, and I did have handouts in the back if anybody wants them, is the blue column on the left, which is to increase reading on grade level by 3rd grade. Our goal as a school board is 75%. Really, we went during our conversation, we said we actually want 100%, but we didn't want to stress out our teachers. So we picked 75%. We're actually doing quite well on that. Ensuring high school readiness. So this is our middle school goal, so that in 8th grade, they're ready to go into high school. High school graduation rate. That's one thing that everyone in the community generally focuses on and is very important. We want to raise that entire goal to 90%, but really within that, focusing on our minority populations, bringing them up to the level of our white population, which is our highest graduating. And I think that's something that we've been doing a fabulous job on. I'm very proud of that. And then fostering postgraduate success. This is something that we have not seen before in our goals that I think really shows that we are not only working hard with our students, but putting our money where our mouth is, saying that the students, once they hit high school, we're not done with them. We want to know that you go to college and that you do great and that you stay. So persist in whatever you're doing, be it college or vocational programming or technical. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about, state of education in Lake Worth. I'm going to try to go fast. And then all the 2 problems that I would really like to address today, which is early childhood education and then attendance. These are 2 areas that I think that the city should really be focusing on after all the information we've gotten into, and then just some other opportunities and then a chance for discussion at the end. Okay, so district schools in Lake Worth. Our first one is Barton Elementary. I want you to know every school in Lake Worth is a C right now, so pretty easy to remember. Each school in Palm Beach County, in Lake Worth is a C. We have 6 schools that are school district traditional schools, so not private or charter. But talking about that, each school, when I went to visit Highland, one of the things that I thought was so great was that she had shirts that had 78 on the back of them. And the reason she had that was how many points they were from an A. And it's such a focus at our schools is how many points is it going to take for us to get there? And I think that's just such a really good point about what we're doing. So you'll see I put on each of these slides, how many points is each school from an A? And then we'll go through that at the end. So there's a lot of great things going on at Barton. They're an AVID school, so college and career readiness. They do academic, parent-teacher teams in grade 3. I don't want to go through all this, but I want you to see all the things that are there. They have an AMP program, which is amazing. Oh, and each principal got an opportunity to tell me what they wanted to put in their slides, so they're all very, very different on what they decided to highlight. They're doing work with parent English language acquisition. They have a SECME club, a botanical gardening club, cheerleading, tribal rhythm, after school and Saturday tutorial, all these things. One thing to notice on here is 58% of the students there there are English language learners. I think this is a really good way to think about demographics within the schools. If you look at those numbers, you can see that throughout Lake Worth, those numbers have been steadily increasing of the children that are coming in, not speaking English or not speaking as a first language, and having to learn it while they're there. Barton currently has 810 students, which is under their capacity. They're the only school in the city that's significantly under capacity. All right, Highland Elementary, also a C. I had different numbers on this. I had 81 points from an A, so you guys can fight over the 3 points if you want, but that's where I got from Mark, so put that in there. 98% of these students free and reduced lunch, 62% English language learners, and they are really, really full at 1,150 students. Again, they have a dual language program, an amazing music program that you would just be just blown away at how great they are doing there. After school clubs, Green School of Quality, they also have AMP, tutorial, summer swing grades 1 and 2, Pew Grant. I mean, it's just so many things happening. And they do actually have a pre-K program. It's the biggest in the city. And they're able to have students in there from 2 to 4 years old. North Grade Elementary, this is my daughter's school. I'm there every day. So it's a K-8 program now, which is really popular. It's something that we're really happy to see. Also a C school, they missed an B by just 2 points this year, so that was really tough, but I think they're definitely on their way. Only 76 points from an A, 81% free and reduced lunch, 37% English language learners, and 687 students. The thing that I think is so special really about this school is that addition of the dual language middle school. It's something we really haven't had that ability for students to be in a dual language program and then go on and stay into middle school with dual language. So that is very special. It's brand new. I think Ms. Patterson, we're just over 30 students in that program for 6th grade this year. So we do start with 6 and we'll just keep growing. And I think that's just going to make that school an exceptionally special place to be. They had Literary Licious, which we won the trunk or treat. Yay. I'm very proud of us. Thanksgiving Day dinner, PTO family picnic, Hispanic Heritage Festival, 3rd through 5th grade morning and after school tutorial, and then they do a summer tutorial for grades K to 2, so 3 weeks there. All right, South Grade Elementary. This school has the highest number of English language learners in the city at 71%. They're also a C school, 111 points from an A. They're 99% free and reduced lunch, 850 students. They also have a dual language program. They have a small VPK, just one classroom. Tons of student clubs. You'll see it all crammed in there. But they have a lot of partnerships within the community. PBSO, Palm Beach Atlantic University, they have a Bridges program, which also Highland has. After school, Rotary Club. And then I put in here the Pineapple Beach Neighborhood Association. Since she added it for me, I wanted to recognize the Neighborhood Association participating in the school since that's so important. Also the 21st Century Enrichment After School Program, and then she does a lot of work with Summer Slide, which I think is exceptionally important for this population, and then FAU Mental Health Interns. Okay, Lake Worth Middle School. So Lake Worth Middle School, also a C school, 179 points from an A. It's a little bit more points that you have to get in middle and high school. 95% free and reduced lunch, 24% English language learners, and they are at 1,167. The two things that are the most important for Lake Worth, so that you know, is that they have two really, really great academy programs that Mr. Williams shared with me, the Biomedical Sciences Academy and the Gateway to Technology Pre-Engineering Academy. Both of these programs are very highly sought after and wonderful. So I'm really very proud of that. I also think there's been a lot of progress within the school in the last few years. So I think we're doing a lot of good things over at Lake Worth Middle. Okay, last one, Lake Worth High, also a C school, 161 points from an A, 64-point increase over the last year. It's a huge growth has been happening there. 93% free and reduced lunch, 23% English language learners. They are at 2,400 students, which is also a growth of the number of students. One of the things that Dr. Epps wanted to point out here that I think is really important is since he took over just, I think, a year and a half ago, we have had the academy's really shortly spelled there, but the Junior Achievement Leadership Academy has been slated to start in fall of 2019. This is something that is going to be nationally sponsored by that organization. Really going to be a wonderful thing for our students. He's brought in this just amazing program, and I think Lake Worth's really going to benefit from it. Discipline's down 30%, which is awesome. He's been working with behavior contracts, parent meetings, so really just trying to make sure that Lake Worth High is a very safe place to go to school. He's also worked really hard on making sure that we are putting extra supports in to help our math and our reading programs because they need extra help. And then I really like this one. I know it's not that interesting to everyone else, but we're actually putting our English language learners in with home language instructors. So the idea is that if you speak Spanish, that you will actually be with a person who also speaks Spanish. So that way you feel that comfort of being in school and also helpful with your learning. So. Yes, isn't it wonderful? I think it's great too. So, all right, and then just a few other things that you can see there. So that covers all of our schools. So now look at, this is the past 3 years with our schools in Lake Worth. As I said, they're all C schools, but you'll see how many of them have come up just in 1 year from a D. So I think this is something that Lake Worth should really be proud of, is that we were able to bring 3 of our D schools up to a C. And as I mentioned before, North Grade just missed that B by 2 points. So it is I think it's something that we should be very proud of here in Lake Worth, and I do think you'll see the focus on education is so strong and on getting the grade up, because as a city we know that this is something that really affects property values. It affects whether or not people want to live here, and selfishly for me, it affects whether or not people want to stay here, because we do always have people that want to move to Lake Worth, but then when their kids hit school age, I know that they try to leave or find a different place to send their kids. I don't think that that makes good community. I don't think that that makes it a place that, you know, I want to keep all my friends to stay. So if they're here, I want them to stay. So that's what we're working towards, is building strong communities so that everyone wants to send their kids to their local schools. Okay, so here's some of the opportunities for change that we're going to be talking about. So first I'm going to cover early childhood ed. We're going to talk about elementary school in the short run, middle and high school in the long run. We're going to cover absenteeism, and then we're going to talk about relationship building and targeted spending. So why did we start this whole conversation? I'll try to keep this as interesting as possible for people in the room who are not education wonks, but there's a test called the Florida Kindergarten Readiness Screener. We got this test back. What they do is they take this test within the first month that they're at school, and every kindergarten student has to take it. And what they do is they look and see how ready is this child for kindergarten. There's a lot of different types of questions on this test. There's a lot of limitations to the test too, but one of the things that we know, even with the limitations that we have, which one of the limitations is really that it's on a computer, and so you have to actually be able to hold a mouse and maneuver it and use that, and some kids have never done that before. And then also if they don't speak the language, that makes it really, really difficult. But there is still a correlation to the third grade reading scores. So what we're seeing is that if you take this test and you put this test next to the third grade reading scores of the same children, 4 years later, and what you'll see is that they really do predict each other. So when we saw the numbers for Lake Worth, we were really not thrilled and nervous. And actually it was a conversation with Dr. Arce that really got me fired up, because she said, what can I do to help my students? They're not coming in at a level that makes it possible for us to get them up as high as they need to be. Just the amount of growth that is needed is really difficult. So you'll look at Barton was 14.3% of the kids ready for kindergarten, 15.9 at South grade, Highland was 24.5, and North grade was at 44.4. The average for the county is about 54 right now. So that's our county, same test. The average is 54. You'll see Lake Worth is coming in where the students are showing up to us, just not ready for kindergarten. So in comes Voluntary PreK. VPK is a free program that was, it's funded by our state. It's for 4-year-old children, and the idea is for them to build a foundation for educational success. VPK is something that, though it's state funded, it's not necessarily part of the public traditional school system. There's a lot of private programs out there that provide it, and that's a great thing. It's still funded the same way. It's only funded for 3 hours a day. It's a voluntary program, 4-year-olds, and it's only funded for 3 hours a day. Now, I've actually, as a part of this, gotten a chance to visit a lot of private sites throughout the city of Lake Worth and surrounding. I'm actually, at the end of this, I'll be done with, I think, 5 tours next week. And I've been visiting with them and learning kind of how they deal with just getting 3 hours of funding a day. Some of them will just pay for 6 because they want kids to stay there for the 6 hours at least. So some of them will pay for the other 3, so 3 from the state and 3 for them. But we also have funding that comes in from the state and from the county through our CSE money. That funding can sometimes get those students to have a full day. So if mom or dad can't pick up their kid at noon or 1 or even 2, they're able to stay with this extra funding. We call it Readiness dollars for part of it. They can pick them up, at 5 or 6. So that really makes a lot of sense. And those students who are in pre-K, they're learning many things. So VPK, again, state funded, only 4-year-olds. Pre-K could go, or early learning in general could go as early as 1, 2, 3. A lot of people put their kids in some sort of program early. All of those programs, the things that they're trying to teach in basic is a lot of the soft skills. And what I've understood from people and principals in general is they've said to me, that what they want is they want a student who can sit, who can raise their hand, who can stand in a line, who can take themselves to the bathroom when they show up to school. Really the basic things to be able to cover. And then their letters, their numbers, and how a book opens and closes. Those are things that if they could be learned before they get to kindergarten, we would really have a big leg up with these students. If they can do more than that, that would be great. But those are some of the soft skills that I think are being taught in a lot of these programs that are so vitally important to make sure that they're really ready to learn. Okay, so let's talk about Lake Worth. So we do this test called iReady, which every child I've talked to hates and every administrator I've talked to thinks is useful. Actually, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had in my car with my daughter's friends that say, can you get rid of iReady? And I say, no, we just spent $500,000 on it. So we're not getting rid of iReady. So iReady is a test. The thing that's great about iReady is that it does a really good job with diagnostics, and it tells us how well students are doing. So this is a test that is done in this specific chart that you're looking at. What I want you to notice is the difference between children who were part of a pre-K program. This is one thing Mr. Maxwell has asked me a few times is, does it work? Is this something that helps? What are we doing? Are we actually growing children? And I think this is a very good question. So what we've had here is whether or not children are in a pre-K program and whether or not they're not in a pre-K program. The problem, the limitation with this data, why there's a little asterisk next to it, is we are not able through this data, it's just a limitation that we have, we're not able to tell whether or not a student was in a program that was not run by the district. So my daughter went to a private pre-K program. She would be considered a non-district pre-K kid in this data. But it's still, I think, a good indication to kind of show you about so many kids don't go to anything. So just following this data, we can kind of see a trend in it. So you can see that students come in at the diagnostic on grade level. So that's like right at the beginning of the school year. They come in a little bit higher for our district pre-K, so the ones who were part of it. And then by diagnostic 3, which is kind of the end of their kindergarten year, you're seeing that they're actually growing just a little bit faster. They're doing just a little bit more. And so I think that's a really important point. So this first one is in reading. The second one is in math. You can see again, children are coming in at a higher level, and then they're actually growing at a little bit of a higher, faster pace. So by the end of the year, they've been able to continue that growth, which I think is very important. Okay, next test that I think is important to see whether or not VPK works. So we actually do a different test among our VPK students, so the students that participate in Barton, South Grade, and Highland in VPK, and we said to them at the orange bar is the beginning of the year, that's what BOY means, and then the blue bar is end of the year, EOI, and you can see the knowledge that the students have at Barton Elementary. This is, they have 2 VPK Title I classrooms. You can see that at the beginning of the year, the children came in with very little print knowledge, very little phonological awareness, very little oral language vocabulary, and very little mathematics. But by the end of this VPK year, so remember they're 4-year-olds, they've actually grown so much. On those same tests done at the end of the year, you can see that growth over time. That's at Barton Elementary. And the gray ones on the far right, those are our district scores. So they come in a little bit higher district-wide, and then they leave just a little bit higher at Barton Elementary. And then at South Grade, you can see we're doing a little bit better of catching them up. in those VPK classes. So those are the kids that are in there. And then here's at Highland Elementary. You can see those students, they actually have students that are, remember we talked about the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, and the 4-year-olds there? Those students, you'll see they're coming in at around or a little less than the district on average, but they are leaving at the same rate as the district on average. So I think this is a really good way to show that VPK has been very successful here in Palm Beach County in these Lake Worth schools. Okay, so one more thing to prove that VPK works, and that I think it's very important. There was a pre-kindergarten task force that was pulled together by Duke University, and they brought together all the interdisciplinary experts that they could find on this, and they all sat down and talked about pre-K programs, and they put together this great report, and these are the really key takeaways from the report. That there's a greater improvement for students who are economically disadvantaged and dual language learners than for more advantaged English proficient children. So to me, these are our Lake Worth kids. We're talking about our kids that are dealing with economic disadvantages and our dual language learners. They are the ones that are going to get the greater improvement by being in a pre-K program. The other thing is that not all VPK programs and not all pre-K programs are the same. What we need is coaching and evidence-based curriculum, which luckily we have programs that are here in Palm Beach County to assist in these things. We have some in our district, and we have some that are through our Early Learning Coalition, which is funded by CSC. The next point is that children attending a diverse array of pre-K programs are more ready for school at the end of their pre-K year than children who did not attend pre-K. So I think the important takeaway from their consensus is that pre-K is important and that it's something that every child should do. The other thing that I think is really great is about when you're looking at what are children walking away with and what does a community get out of it? These are all the things that they've been able to indicate through their research you come away with when you put a pre-K program in. You have reduced child abuse, increased school readiness, higher achievement tests, reduced special education, reduced grade retention, increased graduation rate, and then this is the best for the city, increased earnings and taxes paid, and reduced crime, reduced welfare use, and improved health and health behaviors. So these are all things that you can actually attribute to being a part of pre-K. So what's our need and what's our capacity here in Lake Worth? What we did is we went through and we looked at both public and private schools in Lake Worth and the surrounding areas. So in 33460, where we are right now, there are 277 kids that are participating in a pre-K4 program right now. Of those kids, 84 of them are participating with readiness dollars, which means they can stay pretty much all day. So they start off with those 3 hours, they may stay later in the day. There's currently 20 students that are waitlisted in that zip code, but I have to tell you that being on a wait list is not a good indication of how many kids we need to go. What I think is a better indication is how many students we actually have. So I looked at the kindergarten enrollment, how many kids are actually in school right now in kindergarten in Lake Worth, because we know most of our kids, not all, but most of our kids go to the public schools here in Lake Worth. We do have a couple of other schools that would participate. I would say those just would make the numbers higher. So at Barton, we have 132 kindergartners. Highland, we have 174 kindergartners. South grade, 137. North grade, 107, for a total of 550 kindergartners. So one of the complaints that I've had from our principals is that when students come in and they haven't had any VPK, or haven't had any kind of a programming before they get in there, they're not quite ready to learn. So we have 550 kindergartners this year, so I would say approximately the same next year, maybe a little bit more growth, but only 277 who are participating. I also looked at all of the scores, all of the VPKs surrounding this area. I have to tell you, there's not many places to go. So I thought I'd show you where you can go to school for pre-K here in Lake Worth. So here's all places in 33460. You see Barton, Highland, South Grade, Sacred Heart School, Lutheran Services of Florida, which is the one on Wingfield, and then Guatemala Maya Center actually has 2. So those are the places you can go in the city. If you look at the 4 surrounding zip codes, so 61, 62, 05, and 06, these are the other places that you could go to pre-K. Northern Private School, St. Luke Catholic School, Salem Child Learning Center, Holy Cross, First Baptist Church of Hypoluxo, C.O. Taylor Kirkland, which is kind of a hike, but it's in that area, Palm Springs Elementary, Berkshire Elementary, and then Sweet Pea Daycare. So those are not close. And we know just from experience that our neighbors are really not participating. The students that we really, really need to go to these schools are not really able to get places unless they can walk or if there's public transportation. So I think we can reasonably assume that not a ton of our students from 33460 are going here. That's not to say it's impossible. My daughter actually went to school in 33401 because that was downtown and that's where I worked. But I think that that's probably a rare occurrence, and so there's just not a lot of students actually participating in pre-K here. Okay, so we're going to finally get a break from me talking in a second and have Dr. Robinson say something. So let's talk about early learning opportunities. So what are some of the things that we could do to improve this VPK situation here in Lake Worth? The first thing is scholarships for a full day. Though we do have readiness dollars that are available out there, the problem with that is that not a lot of parents either are able to take advantage of it or fill out the paperwork, or sometimes there's a gap in service where they aren't able to participate in it. So one of the things that we could do is to scholarship Lake Worth children so that though VPK is an unlimited source of funds, the funding to get the aftercare programs, that's not unlimited. We have a hard time getting that for some of our students. So really doing that in a way that we could get students to participate in a full day so parents could go to work if they needed to. And then skipping down a little bit, the marketing piece I think is also key, is telling parents not only that it's available, but that it's important. It's really, really important to have in there. So the second thing is to create more resources for community-based pre-K and VPK. Now that is, and remember I was saying with scholarships, so you can have, that can go to any VPK or pre-K program within the city would be there. Also resources could go, there could be any kind of resources that you would need for the community. So some of that could be the ability to have more materials for the students to be able to have there, make sure that there's the appropriate curriculum that's available for them, anything that they may need to be successful in that day. I think that's something that we should be working on, just creating more opportunities for that. Also facilities. We talked about this a little bit in our education board meetings, was where can we put more students? I think we need more seats. We need more places for there to be seats within the city. Some of the spaces are available. When I talked to Guatemala Maya, they do have more space upstairs, but they have to have a way to bring in enough dollars and enough people to be able to justify getting those spaces opened and hiring a teacher for that. So that is a little space there, but throughout the city, I don't think there's enough places to be able to put VPK students. And the last thing would be to create an early learning collaborative. As I said, Dr. Robinson has been doing this in Riviera Beach, and within that project, they've brought together many of the different early learning groups, both public and private, into one area, and I'd really like to have her speak about that a little bit, if you will. Now's the time.
Okay.
I'll come back in a second.
So this Riviera Beach pre-K collaborative was prompted by two things. One is there's 4 elementary schools in Riviera Beach, and for 2 consecutive years, 2 of those schools had 0 children that were deemed ready for kindergarten based on the kindergarten readiness assessment. So that was, like hair catch on fire. The other thing was that the former superintendent started having conversations about converting one of the elementary schools to a pre-K center, which at first glance sounds wonderful and all, but I also knew because of the people who had contacted me over time that there were a lot of small businesses that served as early childhood education sites. And so essentially I went to these early childhood providers and said, look, we're not getting kids ready, so either we're going to convert this school to an early learning center or you're going to up your game. So which is going to be, right? So they decided that they wanted to up their game. And so we've been meeting more or less monthly with all the players. And at first, let me just say, I cannot imagine, I was in private practice for a little while. The amount of bureaucracy that they have to deal with to run an early childhood education center is ridiculous. I mean, it was like it's like mine was 1/3 and I left private practice because of bureaucracy. It's just ridiculous. So that's not the topic today, but it's like God bless them for the work they do. But the other thing is just getting people together to see the impediments to them, the early childhood centers, the private centers doing a better job. So if we look at it, we're not comparing apples to oranges. So, you know, district staff does a good job of, and our centers are doing the blended funding, so the kids have full day education. Some of them for, I think, up to 10 hours at some sites. Was that, yes? Okay, so up to 10 hours at some sites, and as you saw, VPK is paying for essentially 3 hours a day. So the private providers are either, you know, providing services for nothing or chasing parents to get a few dollars and so forth. The other thing is that the school district sites are staffed by certified teachers, and the private centers are not, and it's just because we have VPK for 3 hours. I'm gonna just leave it like that. If we really as a state want to invest in early childhood education for everybody, we wouldn't pay for 3 hours. We would pay for a full day, but that's another thing. So, but out of this this collaborative, I've learned an awful lot, but I also think that the entities that money flows through to provide for early childhood education understand better the consequences of their decisions. So I sit on CSC and Early Learning Coalition, and so understanding from the other side and how the rules and all we put in place impact what essentially happens for a child, I think is very important. Now we're dealing with the health department and all those bureaucracy. But the other thing is that we, after many years of me having this conversation that I won't bore you with about the information that internal medicine interns use in the months of July, August, and September when they're brand spanking new, and comparing that to what I think early childhood educators need, we finally got a new curriculum. I will tell you this, and it's my my firm opinion that the curriculum for VPK is dumbed down. As of yet, I have not been able to convince myself that there's a good alignment between VPK expectations and kindergarten expectations, but that's a whole other thing. So the final thing I'll mention at this point about the Rubio Beach Pre-K Collaborative, in addition to people starting to work together to talk about how we help children, is we wrote, we drafted an appropriations bill that was filed by Senator Powell. It was a $1.5 million ask. It was, and because we knew from many of the stories and just observation of the needs for such young children, as well as some economic development opportunities that we wanted to create. And so that made it all the way to the governor's desk before it was vetoed. The first go round, the second go round, we got $150,000. And so that was used to buy this brand new curriculum that I think is just outstanding. It's just actually what I've been talking about for a couple of years. But brand new curriculum for these sites. And Children's Services Council and Early Learning Coalition have both been, because of the relationships developed through this collaborative, have been very helpful and willing to step in and fill some gaps. So we've kind of got things going. This is the first year of the new curriculum. So, you know, we already hear that there's some improvements. We clearly are far from zero. I was told actually when we looked at the kindergarten readiness data that that these schools were the lowest in the county. And so I haven't looked at the most recent Riviera Beach data. That means that we have made some significant gains, but nowhere near where we need to go and nowhere near where we plan to go. But working together has really been beneficial for all involved. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So a couple of things that I wanted to just say really quickly. First of all, I want to apologize to Ms. Reggie. You weren't on my list of schools. I don't know why, but I know you have a pre-K site. So I just wanted to say I apologize for that. So for the children down by the Osborne Centers, another location. And then second thing, at our last convening of the school board where we worked to come up with our priorities, I brought up the idea of going and asking for a legislative request related to this. So it is on the table. The school board tentatively agreed to it, just, you know, providing that we could justify it. So hopefully we've put some more effort to justifying that, but that's something that's a possibility as well. Let me just keep going and want to talk to you a little bit about attendance. This is our second and hopefully last big topic. It'll be a lot quicker than the last one, I promise. So attendance is something that is super important. This is just some national data that I think is kind of shows you that if you don't show up to school, you don't graduate at the same rate. What's amazing is how unbelievably exact it is. So you'll see that when students don't come to school more than 21 days in the year, their graduation rate just plummets. So 30 points less than people who are there all the time. So it makes such a difference. Here's some information specific to Lake Worth that I think is really great. So you'll see at the top we have our pre-K programs. These are how many kids are the percentage that were absent more than 11 days, and the more than 15 days, you can see it compared to all other district pre-K programs. And then at the bottom section, you'll see students that were absent 11 days more at our elementary schools, and then 15 days or more. When you're more than 15 days absent, we consider you chronic absenteeism, and that to me means that we have to do lots of interventions. We have a ton of interventions going on at the district. I don't want to talk about them too much unless you're particularly interested in them, but the thing to notice here is just the comparison to the district. It's not something that we're so much worse here in Lake Worth, but I would say there are a few spaces that really could be improved. But keep in mind that these actually carry on. Missing school in kindergarten sets you up for missing school throughout school, your school time. And then if you haven't been showing up, your chances of graduating are just so much less. So this is just looking at Lake Worth High and Lake Worth Middle. You'll see the number of students that we have compared to the district across the board, how many kids are not there, and this even goes up to 21 absences or more. This is our graduation rates here in Lake Worth. You can see the longest blue bar are the students that are there and have only missed 0 to 10 days in their 8th grade attendance, how likely they are to graduate. Those numbers just consistently from 2014 to 2017, they stay right in the high 80% range. But for the students that were 11 to 20, you'll see it goes down. And then for kids that were missing in 8th grade, more than 20 days, their likelihood of graduating 5 years later is so much less. It drops out almost to 50%. So it's consistent with the national data here. So what can a community do, and things that we can actually work towards? This is some of the ideas that came from Attendance Works. Really, a lot of the things come with recognizing our students for improvement. We don't really want to recognize them for perfect attendance, because I think perfect attendance, it's very difficult to achieve. But if a student misses 10 days and then the next semester they only miss 5, that's something to recognize. That's something that we really want to say, we see you, we see what you've done, and we see how you've showed up. So certificates and awards at student assemblies, breakfast or lunch with the mayor or commissioner, that's all you guys. They would love to see you. School supplies, pencil with the logo, smoothie, pizza party for class with best attendance, choice of any donated product that you could come up with, a traveling trophy, that's like a one-time expense, attendance, t-shirts, hats, buttons, age-appropriate awards for most improved attendance. And then I went and talked to St. Aloysius the other day, and she said the thing that she would really love to give is participation in internship opportunities for students if they come. Have that opportunity available for them, so they have motivation to be at school, and then motivation to be able to participate in making their schools and making their families better by having a way for them to make money. So internship opportunities would be great. I think internship opportunities here in Lake Worth would mean so much to the students, and really if we could get our businesses involved, that would be just a wonderful thing. Okay, this one, just talking real quick about other opportunities. I'm almost done, I promise. So this is a name that I got from Omari. I really liked his suggestion around creating anything that we do today, talking about it being the Sam and Fannie James Lake Worth Educational Initiative. The reason for that I think is so special is Sam and Fannie James actually founded the city. And for people who are not Lake Worthers in the room, they were a freed slave couple who moved here, and Fannie was actually the first person to run our post office here in Lake Worth. So we're very proud of them. That we don't have a lot recognizing them here in the city, and I think we should. So this would be a great opportunity to put some recognition where it's deserved. So, building connections. This is something that I think really talks about the relationship building. A lot of the commissioners have had an opportunity and the mayor's had an opportunity to go visit our schools, but I think that we could do a better job of building these relationships. So I think one of the things that Del Rey does is they work to make sure that they recognize anytime a new teacher comes to a school. Every August, they do a breakfast for the principals and all new teachers. They have the superintendent come and speak. It's really not a huge thing to put together something like that, just to have a breakfast, but what it means to the teachers to be recognized as a part of a community, it means so much because they feel like they're actually part of something that they really want to support and be a part of. Maybe our principals can speak to that later. But it's something simple that we could do. The other thing that I think is very important is finding a way to recognize teachers for their successes as we talked about, recognizing students for coming and for any successes they have. If we can recognize the teachers when they do well, specifically this year, as you know, we all have C schools. If a school moves up to a B, I think that's something that we have to celebrate as a city. We have to recognize when they do those things. I try to go in and give hugs and love and tell them how great they are, but coming from you guys, I think that would mean an absolute ton. So recognizing things like that, recognizing the projects that they do, the efforts that they make for our students, the extra hours that they put in, things like that can go a long way. Hopefully the referendum will pass and we can give them more money. But if, even that notwithstanding, having recognition means so much to our teachers and to our principals. Okay, so the presentations by city commission meeting, I think this is something we talked about, having each of our principals come in and talk to you all and give presentations to help build those relationships. I think the accountability is really important, shared accountability by the principals and shared accountability by the city commission, as these are your schools too. And then regular visits by business partners, civic leaders, reading to the students, having lunch with the mayor, commissioners, participation at SAC meetings. I know they seem really boring, but I promise they're all done with their bylaws now, so you don't have to sit there and listen to that, which has been going on for the last couple of months. And then the ongoing teacher recognition. And last one. So this is some targeting spending opportunities. There has been some conversation through my conversations with the commission that you may be interested in putting some money towards some project here in Lake Worth. These are some of the ideas of ways that we could support the schools. So again, we talked about scholarshiping with the early learning program, so that's something. But also in Wellington, they have this project called it's like a low 25 options by principals. So the principals have been given the opportunity to get money from their city, and it could be any amount of money. You could start as low as $5,000 or $1,000, just handing them kind of an opportunity, and then the principals come back to you and they say how they would spend that money. Wellington's actually at $60,000 per school, so you don't have to go there, but they have the option to say how they would work with their lowest 25% students. So the lowest quarter students, the kids that are struggling the most, how would they come back and work towards that? I've heard tutoring could be possibilities. There's different things that the principals may be interested in doing if that was a possibility. I think a city staff position to serve as a liaison between the city and the schools to kind of keep this conversation going could be a very valuable thing for the city to have, even if it was a half-time position. I think that could be great. And then a parent library, so we could send books home with the students, because having books in their homes and in their hands really makes such a huge difference. Okay, I am done. So, yay, we got through it. You guys are so kind. So, Mayor, would you like to lead a discussion on anything?
Sure. Well, I saw you had a question, Commissioner Hardy.
In
the middle of it.
I know that there are some details about the readiness dollars for PPK, and about why a great many of our families in Lake Worth who probably need to access these dollars aren't able to access these dollars. And I was wondering if School Board Member Whitfield could elaborate on that, because I think it's important information. That was a question that I had during the presentation.
There's some requirements for readiness.
We just need you to have a microphone.
Mayor,
I'm sorry,
come on up.
people are watching. Thank you.
So MJ is the head of our early learning group at the school district. Can you use that microphone? Okay, great.
Yes, thank you.
MJ Steele.
There are some requirements that parents be working. That's one issue for our parents. Parents have to go back in and recertify very frequently. That's another issue for our parents. Some of our parents might be immigrants that have not yet, that may be undocumented. We just have some reluctance for some of our folks to go down and get the even if they qualify, to go down and get these funds.
Could I, on the undocumented status, is it the case that if the parent is not undocumented, that the child is unable to access the readiness dollars, or is it also the case that if the child is undocumented, that the child cannot access the readiness dollars? Or is it not at all a hard prohibition on the part of the state, but rather just people being afraid to deal with the government or the system if they're undocumented?
I believe that we need to get more information on that from our Early Learning Coalition, which we can do and bring back to you. I'm not as knowledgeable about that as the folks who actually manage the money are, and I'd like to get you really accurate information.
Can I ask if any of the principals in the room who have a site, I think Dr. Arce might be great, or anyone who has a site might want to speak to the parents who come to the schools wanting to participate in a program? Is anybody interested in it? I am. Did you say No, interested. It's talking about what the parents experience, but wanting to be a part of a program and not.
I'm sorry, quiet in the chambers, please. This is interact. This is.
FAU healthcare. Is there an FAU and healthcare?
I'm sorry, Anna. This is a conversation between the school board members, and yeah, thank you.
Do you know what I'm asking? No. So I know that we've had some parents that have come to Dr. Arce specifically speaking about wanting to be at the VPK program, but there weren't enough seats there for them. And then maybe some of the issues they have. I know we only have 18 seats available at her school specifically, but the parents have come and asked that they would really like to be at that school, putting their kid in a VPK program there, and they haven't, had the ability to be a part of it. So,
well, that's been the ongoing conversation since we started the Mayor's Education Council. I mean, the goal, I'll give a little bit past history. The goal in the very beginning was, okay, identifying two of the biggest issues that we had. And at the time, this is probably 4 years ago now, maybe about 4 years ago, was, finding additional VPK programs. And, in my opinion, I was looking for one in every district. Mm-hmm. So we had 4 districts and having one. And the second was that we found in middle school that there was not a lot of programming and things in the middle school years, that a lot of the issues with getting in trouble or not moving forward was, that the kids needed an outlet. So we thought if we could find churches with school that would meet the qualifications to do, a center, we could find one in each district. And initially we started just one on the north and one on the south, that we could provide VPK from early morning till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then change it over to middle school for the afternoon to like 8 p.m. and have programs. And then we got actually the YMCA came in and offered transportation and offered this and that. We were looking for locations. We had one, and then unfortunately it fell through. So we were close to getting one, but that was to add the additional spaces, because every single principal that was at those meetings said that there was a total need for more spots. Absolutely. That Lake Worth has more need than it shows up in any type of survey, testing, whatever it may be, and that if there was one in walking distance in each district, these kids would be going, without a doubt.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Vice Mayor?
Erica, along that line, so we have about 98% free and reduced lunch. How come we can give them free lunch, but it's such a big hurdle to get the finances to the VPK, which we find is most important? I wrote down your comments where, how do we get the state to pay for a full day? What do we have to do? What's the ask? What do we have to do to get it seems like we're giving a piece here, but we're not giving the rest of the piece. And when I talk to students, one of the biggest things is I'm not doing well because I'm hungry. That I don't understand that. So now we have and from what I understand, we're getting more funding. If it's free and reduced lunch, we get more funding. I work closely with the mayor of Wellington, and, you know, they give $60,000 per school, but her budget is 97 million. You know, it seems like there's such a big gap, and if it's because they're undocumented, what can we do to help feed that problem and you know, piece it all together? What do we need to do? What's the ask? If we're going to Tallahassee, you know, every city goes to Tallahassee and has a list of asks. We can put that on our list of asks, and we should be putting it, but we need to know what the ask is. What you said, there's some problems there, whatever it is. Let's identify the problems and figure out how we put that in an ask, so we can bridge those gaps and we can get the full day. You know, if we're missing it. I've worked for years with bridges, and it seems like they've helped Highland. We have a brand new principal at Highland. I did a walkthrough at Highland. It's brilliant what you're doing. And I want to thank everyone in this room for taking the time to be here. And every school is unique to itself. Reggie, I mean, you're doing phenomenal things, but we still have all these pieces that are missing. So we need to figure out what the ask is, and then let us, as your electeds, go to Tallahassee and fight for that ask to bridge the gaps, to try to build that up. And if it's a full day, then that's what we need to be asking for, but we need to know exactly what the funding is, once it gets here, how we utilize it in each individual school, because each principal here is going to have a different need based on what they're seeing in those districts.
So so there's different funding sources. So there is no FTE funding. So free and reduced lunch doesn't really play out in the preschool early childhood world. So the VPK funds the 3 hours. Then Readiness dollars, as a school district, we supplement Title I dollars to help bridge some of our schools to add additional slots. But for the Readiness dollars, which either comes from through the state or through locally through Children's Services Council, that supplements the VPK. So schools and providers are able to expand that. But there's currently a wait list. There's a wait list you saw for 33460, I think it was with the 20. But district-wide, I think the wait list is right now 4,000 students.
Well, help me understand the wait list, because you have about
So there's no money.
277 taken.
So there's not enough dollars. There's no more dollars left to fund and pay for kids to actually attend.
So
Okay,
there's
help
two
me understand,
pots
if
of
we're
money.
98% free and reduced lunch, and we're getting more.
Not for VPK, for Readiness.
Yeah, but, okay, so wait. So
What's the difference between Readiness
Yeah,
and VPK?
see, the whole thing is crazy.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. But I just want to be
Go ahead.
clear that it
I know you
wasn't.
can say.
Can we just say, though, that funding for food comes directly from the Department of Agriculture at the federal level, and that
Okay.
is a consistent fund. As many kids as we get, we can put on that list and we can feed them.
So
And
so
the
nobody's
same
going
thing-
hungry.
Well,
No.
people
Well,
are going hungry, but you're
but-
not allowed to stop on that funding. The
Okay.
funding that we get for Readiness is a finite pot, so that pot is only so full and only has so much ability for us to give out. We get funding there through two different places, through the state and through our CSC. So those, we cover it with the additional tax dollars that we pay as a community for our Children's Services Council. Part of that comes from there and part of it comes from the state, but that pot runs out. We actually just got a new infusion of money through our Early Learning Coalition, but even then it will run out and we still will not have covered every kid.
Okay, so it goes back to the VPK. What is our ask when we go to Tallahassee to help fund that?
I would
Because
say
it-
that's a really big ask though, because we're asking for the entire state to be funded. It's something we ask for all the time. I don't think it's gonna happen.
And we can't specifically ask for
We
funding
can.
for Lake Worth. If we ask for funding for Lake Worth and it comes through the school board, can we get it for Lake Worth, or does it have to come, like the county? It comes into the county and Lake Worth gets a piece.
So I think legislative appropriations really are something that they don't like to just do something that would be a continual funding. They don't want to give us something that we then spend and then need more of.
And that's fine, if we get a head start, you know. I'm trying to figure out, it's the same thing with when we do events in the city. Somebody wants to do a new event, the first thing I say is, how are you gonna fund it? So, you know, if we identify the issue and the problem, how are we gonna fund it? Lake Worth only has so much funding and so many pots to pick from, and it seems like we have a large need. If we have about 350 students on a waiting list, so to speak, because we have 550, you have 277. That's a big piece. So I'm just trying to
No, I agree.
figure out, what the need would be, what the exact ask would be, and then how to try to find the funding.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, just to parse a few things. First, I agree with Vice Mayor Amoroso. I think that we can add to our legislative priorities, VPK funding, and that doesn't necessarily have to be specific to Lake Worth. Obviously, I what we could be doing basically is adding our voice to a chorus of people, not only in Palm Beach County, but probably throughout the state, who are probably going up to the legislature and saying that you guys need to do right by all kids who are pre-kindergarten throughout the state of Florida. And that is incrementally more effective. Like, who knows how the legislature is going to act? It is a huge ask. But what I do know, if it's not just the school district of Palm Beach County, but if it's the city of Lake Worth and the school district of Broward County, if there's a large chorus of people going to the legislature asking them for the same thing about these huge ideas and programs, then maybe we can add our efforts to something that could potentially be successful for everybody in the state. And I think this, yes, the idea of a legislative appropriation is something that we could potentially explore. I don't believe that we have established in our last meeting with our lobbyist. I don't believe that we established, that we would be requesting anything. So right now we have a clean slate, and I don't see why this shouldn't be, the first entry on our potential legislative appropriations. The other thing is that VPK funding is unrelated, seemingly, to need. Right. I mean, there's a pot of money. I mean, and that's crazy, right? But there's a pot of money, and I think what Vice Mayor Amoroso, what you're getting at is basically like this pot of money doesn't seem to be distributed fairly, right? If you use free and reduced lunch as a proxy for need, then like clearly there are some schools that and some schools in some areas that have greater needs than others, but the state is kind of need agnostic in its dissemination of these resources, and that's a problem. And that's something, frankly, that we can go to the legislature and say, not only do you need to increase funding overall, right, for VPK, but you guys need to change the way that you want to distribute the dollars. And again, that's something where, who knows if it would actually happen, but we could certainly add ourselves to this chorus of people advocating for a better statewide policy, in addition to a separate legislative appropriation. The other thing is, when it comes to VPK, I am, first of all, really glad that School Board Member Whitfield provided some evidence that VPK is effective, right? I think because there are some skeptics out there that look at VPK as like this sort of a boondoggle because they potentially didn't grow up with VPK, right? And so, they're kind of skeptical of whether or not it works. And I think we've seen evidence that it works. And what I think is really important, okay? Commissioner Herman Robinson has said this before, right? From the standpoint of the city, right, we want the best residents we can possibly get, right? And then once we get them here, we want to keep them here, right? And it's sort of like an economic development question for us. But, like the fact is, and, Commissioner Herman Robinson said it exactly this way, if we had all A schools, we would not need an economic development department or person or strategy or program or what have you, because people would be clamoring to get here, right? And so when I look at the correlation between kindergarten readiness, which is directly correlated with VPK, and I look at that and third grade reading scores, which is, a huge factor to our school grades, I think it's like a clear mandate for us to do something. And I think that something here would be to fund hours and seats in VPK.
I like your need agnostic. That was funny.
Can I make one more comment about VPK just in general? I think when you talk about students that have higher need than others, having the opportunity to get a leg up like this, to be able to be in a program a little earlier because they need a little bit more supports. I think all it does is give them the opportunity to be on par with other children.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things Lake Worth has is just a very large number of children who honestly just don't speak English. And so to put them in our systems and make them take tests in English
Right.
that they have not had a chance to learn
Right.
is a lot to ask from
Right.
a little kid.
Right.
So to give them a chance to be in school earlier, I think makes the education easier, but also gives them a chance to really get to the level that the other students that they've had the other opportunities to do.
Right. And so, my question to you, and I can tell you how I feel, right? My position is cities stand to benefit from having better schools. And I understand that we have a separate school district, right? You guys are this legally completely separate entity from us, and you guys have your own taxing authority that the legislature completely, continually takes away from you more and more every year. And I know that, I'm aware of that, but we stand to benefit from your success, and our kids stand to benefit from your success. And so my question is, if the city of Lake Worth were to try to fund something, okay, what exactly would you, if it was, if you had a list of priorities, what would be your number one priority? Would it be expanded VPK hours or expanded VPK seats or a mix of both? Or would it be something other than VPK? We talked about some attendance initiatives. If we could do something financially for children in Lake Worth who are in our schools, both district run and non-district run, we talk about early childhood learning, what is it that we could do? Just very specifically.
How much money?
I'd say.
Well,
And the better question is, how much money don't we have?
Could we?
If it was a very little amount of money, I would go to the last things on my list.
The attendance.
Attendance or the things about recognition. I think you could do that for a fairly low amount of money. Building relationships is very cheap. If it was more amounts of money, I think we could really head into that land of working on BPK and trying to do that. Or if it's you want to have very low administration costs, but there is funding, I think the low 25 ideas, letting our principals have, is it really, as much as I go and visit schools, these principals are there day in, day out. They know their needs. I would like them to have a say in how any money was spent if it was those opportunities. So, I leave it up to you to decide if there was funding and you wanted to do something with it. I would say, those are I tried to boil it down to different kind of cost levels of, things that could help, but all of those areas are things that we could really use support in.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Robinson?
Good question, Commissioner O'Leary. It's always in how you spend it. Breakfasts are important too. We get breakfast. The kids, they have to have their breakfast. I'm interested in if investing in our schools, because obviously Tallahassee isn't that interested in education. So the first thing we can do is vote for legislators that are going to credit education for our country's survival. I can just ask next Tuesday, please vote for the recognition of importance of education. So we can do that. I would like, because the tyranny of Tallahassee has taken away money for education, we're going to have to invest ourselves with the money that we have. And I want to recognize the parents that are going to get involved. And, we haven't mentioned, we've talked about professional education, but parents are a big part of a leg up. And I'd like to be able to fund and recognize the SAC or some parental involvement in all the schools. So that would be one of my requests for spending. I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking, but the expectation, even Dr. Epps, I've been on campus when he has an expectation of behavior, and that leading by example. When you're expected to behave, when you're expected to succeed, expectation is counts. And I want our children to be proud of their schools. I want our community to be proud of our schools. I want our children to be proud of our community. I just think that we need, as a community, need to be more involved, whether we have kids or not, in our schools. And I want to put our money into schools. So we're going to have to decide, and I hope we decide that we are going to invest in our schools. And I would like to put parental involvement in the mix.
One of the things I think we should probably lay out there for the community and the educational community is a little bit of our history as a city. Just 7 years ago, we were near bankruptcy. Our employees hadn't had raises in over 8 years. They were still doing things in the ledgers, not even on computer. Stuff that you would, if you're not here all the time to know about these things. So, we've had a lot of financial challenges ourselves. But I know that, you as administrators and as teachers, and you're taking out of your own pockets to handle a need that's not being, compensated by the government, by anything. And we feel, as we start to improve as a community and start to, we've been able to get staff back up and have a professional staff that we can actually afford to pay for now. And every time we get a win, which is an increase in our tax base or whatever, we apply it toward righting wrongs and creating new foundations, and infrastructure for our city. So I don't want you to think, trust me, if I won, we actually sat down, a bunch of us played the Mega Millions when it was 1.6 billion, and we wrote down what we were going to give to the city and how much of it we were going to give to the staff and how much we were going to give to this and that. We have big hearts here in this community, that definitely for sure. But we have our reality just like you have your reality. But the reason I say this, I just don't want you to be misled in any way, shape, or form, is that we are the best example in our 7 square miles of the world and its changes and the things that are going on. We're the best example. We have the ability to be, and I say this in regards to other city issues, the best test market, the best example of programming and new projects and things, because I like to say we're scrappy. We get behind each other and we do things, and I've said this before to other people who've heard me, we might be mad at each other and fight within each other, but if anyone comes and says anything bad about our school or our city or whatever, we'll band together to stick together to tell you, oh really? And show you why we're better. So we have this ability in this 7 square miles. So I feel that, we all have the same issue, and we all have the same, we all have needs as communities. This community needs more than other communities. I'm sorry. People don't realize that because we sit at the base of the island of Palm Beach, that we're some sort of opulent community when we're the second most impoverished community in Palm Beach County.
Is that right?
We are just better than Belgrade and just worse than Rubio Beach in our poverty levels. So, but they don't look at that, but that's exactly what we're facing with our children and with our, so there's a need here that's just as great, if not greater, than many other communities. Some other communities got through it earlier and advanced as their cities advanced and were able to do things, but we're still scrappy and we're still struggling. We're trying to do this. This is why this today is a really good time for us to band together and to really come together to figure out what we can do to help each other, how getting more involved with one another, but we have a challenge. I mean, our kids, especially they're learning English for the first time, they're going home and teaching their family how to speak English. They're the teachers, in this group. So it's not, you don't have as active a parent role, which is always, always help. I think of growing up, I went to public schools in New York, and your parents got involved. They came, they showed up, they did things. These parents are not involved. So I'm saying we have so many different things pointing not in our favor. Yet I do believe that we have the biggest opportunity to grow and progress fast, and in really dramatic numbers, and be an example for the state, not just, or the world, even for that matter, but especially for the state. But how do we go about getting those dollars now? How do we, you know what I mean? How do we as a city, our people need it, our teachers need it, our schools need it. We all, you know what I mean? Our kids need it more.
So, my name is Jeff Pegg. I'm one of the instructional superintendents. I just, first of all, outstanding questions. And MJ, I'm for sure waiting to hear what that answer is about that funding, because that's for sure a huge one, right? But number one, the greatest thing that you have going on, you have some awesome, and you know this already, some awesome leaders, principal leaders here. They're here tonight to be able to move their schools on and move their kids on. And for sure, having Dr. Robinson and Ms. Whitfield here, along with Mr. Oswald, that's a great step forward also. So the thing is, when you sit back and start, that funding issue is crucial, because I'm going to tell you, I'm speaking as an individual on this part here. I always wondered, those that know about signing up for VPK are the ones that always have their hands in that right off the bat, all right? And some of ours that miss out on that, they're always playing, because I remember being a principal, they would always come to me after the date wanting to be in VPK. And to me, the worst thing for me as a principal was the saying that the deadline has passed or the waiting list is a mile long. So I can tell you, VPK's, I agree 100% with you, it's the most awesome thing going. And the fact that Palm Beach County, as a group, has stepped up to extend that VPK day. It's one of the few counties across the state of Florida, if not across America, that has stepped up. My grandson lives in Colorado. He goes 3 hours, and then my daughter-in-law has to go pick him up. So we have some great benefits here. I think, first of all, we'll get that funding, but you all stepping up today was a big step, right? And I appreciate Ms. Whitfield setting this up. But the bottom line is just your dedication, going in to Lake Worth High and telling Mr. Epps what an awesome job that you are doing in leading the youth in Lake Worth. He's done an unbelievable job. And what our elementary and middle school teachers, just amazing. And you know what? Poverty does not stop children from learning. I'm going to tell you that right now. And I will tell you, if you want to visit many elementary schools that are 94% minority, 94% poverty, that have been an A school for 16 years in a row, that proves everybody wrong in Tallahassee.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good answer.
First of all, I can tell that gentleman has worked in a school. But I'll add one addendum to that. Poverty does not keep kids from achieving what it is that they're capable of, provided the adults around them do right by them, right? And so that's our job, to unleash their potential. And so on that subject, what it is that we can do. My question is, when it comes to incentivizing better, like improving attendance, if I were, and any one of us can put something on the agenda, if we're talking about a small money solution, if I were to put on the agenda a budget amendment for something, and I don't even know if it will require a budget amendment for something less than $25,000, could you guys figure out a way to incentivize students to improve their attendance from year to year, for elementary students from trimester to trimester, even from month to month, and for middle and high school students from quarter to quarter? Could you guys figure that out and get it to me in writing? And I will gladly put that on the soonest regular agenda that we have. Is that something that I can get from you guys?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then thank you. I very much appreciate that. Then the next question is, we talked about big money. Vice Mayor Amoroso pointed out that Wellington gave, I believe it was $300,000 total to their schools, and their principals could work out low 25 solutions for that. Fortunately for Wellington, they have a $98 million budget, and we have a $33 million budget. And yes, they're all A schools, and we're not A schools. And I have to say, I hate to correct Madam Mayor, it was Pahokee that we barely edged out for second lowest in the county. So Belglade, which has a 25% unemployment rate, is still richer than us, which is crazy. And we talk about the disparity of resources, but there is a potential source of money for Lake Worth, and it comes from our Sustainable Bonus Incentive Program. So for those who are not familiar, we basically make developers pay the city in some way, right, to get additional stories above 3 stories, right? So all throughout the city, if you want to build a 3-story building, we're going to let you do that by right. If you want to go to 4, 5, 6, 7, we basically make the developer spend money to make changes to their project that we think would benefit the public. And I have not been shy about the fact that I think some of the changes that we have asked the developer to make and some of the changes that have qualified for the sustainable bonus incentive have not been shall we say,
meaningful.
Meaningful, right? So for example, there is a developer who's doing a project on 6th Avenue who is spending over $200,000 on a pool and some cabanas. Over $100,000 are going to be spent on the cabanas, and over $100,000 of changes are going to be made to the pool that they were going to have. And the idea is that the pool would also be public. I don't know how we would enforce that, but that's what we made the developer do, right? So if we were, for example, to give the developer the option to cut us a check for a fraction of that, half of that, a quarter of that, right? A quarter of $200,000 is $25,000. That's not a small number, and that I'm sure would help more than one family, and I think that's a good thing. And so something I think we should consider, and I would like to see it on an agenda, at least for a workshop, to discuss drafts that have already been made to this program but that haven't come before us, is the idea that we can change our sustainable bonus incentive program to allow the developer to just cut us a check for a fraction of the amount of money that they would have to spend to make these changes to their projects that don't, in some cases, have tremendous public benefits. And I would like to see us the next time that we get together or sometime in the future discuss how we can do that and whether or not it would be worth it. And I think that could be a source of larger amounts of dollars for you guys. And when it comes to VPK, it's kind of like NASA spending, right? Like if you look at the amount of every dollar that's spent on NASA, right, the return for the United States of America has been tremendous, right? And if we were to balk at the amount of money we would have to invest in extra pre-K seats, I think we should think about the return on that. The return on that could be huge, right? If we could just get our pre-K readiness up to, in some cases, half of what Palm Beach County is doing, we could really, really improve educational outcomes at our schools. So I would suggest that we look at the money and not shrink from what I believe is our responsibility to help the school district help us.
Yes, Mayor?
Yeah, just to piggyback on a couple things. So when I travel to Tallahassee and Washington, I often travel with Pahokee, Belglade, and Riviera, because when we go in a pack, we get what we want. So my ask, and I will talk to them, but also as you're talking to those cities, ask them, we're all going to Tallahassee soon with our asks. Ask them to make this a priority for their cities. And I would still like the question answered, if we go and we get it specifically for Lake Worth, can we spend it in Lake Worth? Through the district. Yes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to make sure that's clear. I agree with Commissioner Hardy. Everyone should be asking, but it's all about us and our needs. I don't necessarily agree with Commissioner Hardy on the developer piece. I think we need to have that conversation, but I think we need the money now. I don't want to leave it up to if a developer comes in and if a developer wants to buy into the program, if there was one. I would rather find funding now. What does one all-in VPK look like? What kind of cost is that? I'd like to know what that is. So as we're
You mean like one classroom? Because there's it depends on how many kids you have.
one child, full day, all-in VPK. Because I like your, I like your list of asks because I often tell, like Lake Worth High School, the kids often come and say, we need money, we're trying to raise money for X, Y, and Z. I tell them, give me a list of what you need. If you come to me and say, I need a microwave for my classroom, I can get you a microwave. And people, I represent a lot of the merchants downtown, people are more apt to buy you a microwave because they know where their dollars are going. One year I bought a classroom chalkboard for one of the classes because they didn't have enough money for a chalkboard. It's easier if you have a complete ask. And the same thing, like you saw, I own a juice bar. I often go to schools and teach the children about healthy eating and bring the juice bar, and we have a big juice bar party. I will do that for every class in the city of Lake Worth. And so that's something I can do as a small business. And somebody called me the other day, we're doing a cleanup, I need 2 cases of water and some garbage bags. Boom, done. So if you have a complete ask, it's easier for merchants to say, that's $250, boom, I can do that. Dave's Last Resort does it all the time for the different schools. And so, that can be had if we have a specific ask. So what does one full day of VPK all-in cost look like? And then that way, if the city's looking at it, we know that we can buy 10, we can buy 20 today versus waiting for a developer. And if a developer steps up or, something, we often talk to developers on our own, or people are looking to donate to our campaigns. We can say, we have 6 VP on the waiting list. This is what the number looks like. Give me a couple $100 for my campaign and give the rest of the VP. There's a lot of different things that can be done like that. So I'd like to know what that all-in cost is.
Another thing too is that you realize that, and I'm sure you're seeing this in your schools too, our schools, families are growing. We're getting we're bringing in now, as we start to grow and change, we're bringing in more families. And, more, that means more kids, and our class sizes will grow and all those different things. Just like what I mentioned before, that as a city, it took us forever just to get ourselves together. Now when we did a comp and class study on the salaries of our organization as a city, because we want to be the place, not that you go because you can't get in somewhere else. We want to be the first choice for professionals to come to our city to work there and work for the rest of your life if you want to, until retirement. But I feel the same thing about the schools. I've seen such great improvements in our schools and the passion of the people involved and things like that. We're a growing community. We're the next town simply because of our passion, the passion of our people. I really believe that. I know I'm very biased, but but we are.
One of the thoughts, I know we were probably running low on time, but one of the thoughts that is, with all these ideas that we have come forward with today, obviously we can create an attendance proposal. I think that's a great idea. But I think the biggest thing is, if we are putting together a true collaborative of the city and the school district, what would that look like? And then would it be something that you guys would be interested in going forward with a legislative request? I think coming from two important organizations within this city, I think it could be that partnership would really mean a lot for a legislative request. I have the ability to propose that to the full board again if they're interested, but they did seem interested so far. If your board is interested in that too, we can try to pull together with what would actually that request would look like. I imagine that since they do like to buy things rather than programs, we would ask for a building or fixing up of space or something to create more spaces for VPK. I could see that as like a one-time cost that we could ask for. But we could work it out however you want to. If you're interested, I'm happy to spend some time on it. I can sit with staff and we can talk about it.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. I have a list of disjointed things. So the first is, I just want to say this about the absenteeism. So elementary absenteeism, is an adult problem, clearly. Yeah. Right? And so I don't know that we've done this, but somebody needs to ask the parents why the kids aren't coming to school. Because we're going to fix a problem we're gonna fix the wrong thing, is my concern. Knowing Mr. Oswald, he might have the answer, but I just wanna make that point. So, number two, I need to say, I'm over here itching every time somebody talks about the school grades. I hate the school grades. Now, I do understand the city's point of view because the school grades, you know, the higher the school grade, the more it helps the city sell real estate and so on and so forth. But I think that as we move forward, we need to be clear about, are we focused on the school grade or focused on the educational development of the children? Because then the approach is a little bit different. There's nuanced difference there. So, but what some of the things, back to Commissioner Hardy's question is, one, you could have a city policy where city employees can go to read to kids in school on company time. Other cities have them. They don't use them as much as they should, but they have them, right? The other thing is, for a low cost, there's a program that I got started in at Barton Elementary in Riviera Beach called Young Lions, where there's a coordinator was hired with actually county money, but to recruit men from the community to go into the school on a regular basis every week and read to third grade boys. It was specifically focused on third grade boys. And through that, then not only did they have the reading skills, but they had that caring adult. Because what we had to focus on is the caring adult, right? That's what's going to connect the kids, right? So they had their caring adult. And then also we started morphing into reading about character development things, you know, books that talked about if something would happen, how would you respond to it? So it wasn't just reading the words, but teaching life lessons too. So that's something that could be, that was a low cost. I would strongly encourage you to look at the education liaison for the city. I just, because it sounds like you want to go, and I'm thrilled, and I'm honored to be here. And I actually sent an email during the meeting to Riviera Beach to say I want to do the same thing there. So with the K-12, because I've been focused on pre-K. So in addition, I want to say, so we keep saying VPK. I want to be clear, VPK is a funding stream. So we're really talking about early childhood education, right? And the multiple funding streams. So I think that what I heard the Vice Mayor talking about was actually asking for more money for school readiness, or say, yes, you should fund VPK for a full day, either in Lake Worth or across the state, whatever it is. I just want to be clear. So when you start writing stuff up, the ask has to be clear, right? I would ask you to consider an education foundation for the city, right? And then, so instead of the sustainability project, that maybe people then would put money into that foundation, and then you as an entity, based on what your education liaison said was a priority, based on all the conversations with the educators, could prioritize those dollars. And then the last thing, what I didn't see in the presentation, it seems like it's so hard to get the unmet need, because there's going to be some children in home pre-K, right? Absolutely. And so so we had to figure all that out before we know what the unmet need is and know how to attach numbers and dollars to it. And then the last thing is, for me, I think it's very important to have expanded after school so that kids are safe. And then we can bring in, you know, like Prime Time and other people so that they can have these expanded opportunities to build their experiences, and then that, and homework assistance as opposed to tutoring. So I'm done. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I apologize to everybody that I was a little bit late today, and I missed the beginning of your presentation. And Dr. Robinson, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of disjointed things that we need to discuss here this afternoon. How can you say no to children? The word is you can't. But we need to be responsible and how to respond to the needs of the children. And we need to be intellectually honest with ourselves as to what the needs of those children are and what the basis and the root cause of those needs are. Okay? And that's where I'm coming from. And that's where I'll be coming from. So I'm going to ask a few very difficult questions, and some of you in this room may start to squirm. Okay, but I apologize. No, I'm not going to apologize. Okay, because this is important to me. I don't have a child at school any longer. Yeah. Okay. But what I've heard hear from our side of the table tonight. There's a lot of enthusiasm and wanting to partner with you, and that is certainly commendable. And I embrace that enthusiasm. But I've also heard some things here that I think are not entirely true. For example, cutting of funding at Tallahassee level. I think we established that at a previous meeting with Ms. Whitfield in the room. The state has not cut funding, they just haven't increased it. Okay? And there's a difference between the two. They didn't take, it might, so, you know, just like us, we have a budget to work with. We have a budget to work with, and we have to cut corners if we have to cut corners to meet our budget. The question I have is, the first one I'm gonna have is, if I gave you an open checkbook, how long would it take you to give me 8 schools in the city? That's the question. Anybody have a guess?
With an open checkbook?
I gave you all the money you need. How long would it take Lake Worth to turn these schools around and be the premier education system in Palm Beach County, the state of Florida, America?
Probably about 2 years.
Yeah, we know how to work the school grade game. That's not the
No.
same as educating children.
Thank you very much. That's exactly my point. It's not about working the grade game. It's about, are these children really learning? Are they actually, are the things that they're being exposed to actually sticking with them? And are they going to be able to take what they've learned with them into junior high school, into college, and as they grow as adults?
And we've seen the graduation rate here go up continuously. I think he's at 80, over 80%, with a state that has probably the highest standards for graduation. Graduation standards have changed considerably, and of course exams that kids have to pass. And these kids over time are graduating at a high rate.
I guess I'm a little older than a lot of folks here in the room. Sorry to say that, but glad to say that in some respects. A low graduation rate is completely foreign to me. I came from a high school, we had 700 and some kids in our graduating class. We started out with 700 and some, and we all graduated, every one of us. There was no discussion of dropping out of school. It just didn't happen. You didn't do it. Okay? So as I said at the beginning of my comments, a lot of the things we're talking about are symptoms of bigger problems.
He's from the Midwest.
They're symptoms of bigger problems, and I haven't heard us talk about the root of the cause. The first time I heard somebody mention parents was an hour and 46 minutes into this meeting. An hour and 46 minutes into this meeting was the first time that somebody spoke of parents in a material way, and that was Dr. Robinson, I believe. When you talked about her, I'm sorry, I can't hear I'm getting old, I can't hear then. But it was a long, long time. The point is, in the presentation, I didn't hear much discussion, if any, about parental involvement. Now, we can't force parents to do anything now, can we? Can we? Here's what I'm coming at. At the end of the day, here's what I'd like to see. Instead of having these statistics, which, by the way, your attendance statistics, in my mind, that there wasn't a material difference in our absentee rate than anybody else in the county. So as far as I'm concerned, you throw that away. That's a non-starter. It's not about attendance. There's something else going on here. So, well, I don't know. I'm asking you.
No, attendance is a crisis throughout the entire county.
Correct.
It's everyone has the problem.
Okay.
And
So-
I think the numbers showed that it was slightly worse here.
It's a little,
One at a time, please.
So here, when I came in today, I really had one question that I wanted to ask. And that is something to the effect, what characteristics or elements are common in a school that is considered superior? Can you quantify what those are in writing? And I'm not talking necessarily statistics. I'm talking a little narrative, a sentence or two. Can you enumerate what are the common characteristics of a superior functioning school?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because the first time I ever met Dr. Robinson before I was on the school board, she actually asked me the same question.
Right. In other words, what are the
She said,
ingredients?
what makes a good school?
if-
And I went home and I had to think about it for a very long time.
If you're going to cook a cake, or make a cake, or bake a cake, what do you have to do to bake a school, to make a school great?
Right.
What are those characteristics? And if you could outline those for me, then I will turn around and ask you, what is it that the city of Lake Worth lacks in those characteristics? I think if we start there, then we can start having a conversation about funding things. But to simply throw money on the table because we think it's going to be, a benefit. You have a $3 billion budget. That's billion with a B. It's a lot of money. Okay, a lot of money. We are in no financial position to just start writing a blank, writing checks.
Well, can I just say really quickly to a couple of your points? First of all, I definitely would not want you to spend money you're uncomfortable spending. I do think that there's a lot of ways that the city and the city commission can be involved in our schools that would show positive gains without any money going into it at all. One of the reasons that I feel that this group is so important is because we have seen the way that an involved city can really affect our students, and how there's been cities similar to this one that have done very well with just having participation increase, having that the community be a part of the schools. And I would say that that is one thing that makes a school really great. One of the things that I love about my school is that when I go there, my daughter feels welcomed, she feels loved, and her opportunities are great. She can be awesome just by showing up to school every day. She really impresses me just by being a part of her school, and the way that this community is to me living here. I think it's a wonderful place to be, but I don't think every student shows up to school able to take advantage of the opportunities that we do provide as a school system. So what I think we're proposing today is for the children who show up without having all the blessings that we all may have, how do we spread that out to give those opportunities? So I think that is where funding does come in, is how do we spread the blessings.
Dr. Robinson, did you have an answer? You had something you wanted to say too?
She's much
I
better.
think Commissioner Hardy was ahead of me.
Oh, okay.
I would like to
I'm sorry.
finish.
Oh, excuse me.
If you don't mind,
No,
thanks.
please.
So here's a couple things, and Ms. Whitfield, you mentioned other things don't really cost you money. 20 years ago, I was a mentor at Northgate Elementary. What happened to that program? 20 years ago, I would go into that school as a mentor to children. Where is it? I mean, folks, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here to educate our children. And one of the concerns I have from 30,000 feet, because I'm not an educator, even though I, believe it or not, started out in college to be one, is that sometimes we keep creating these new programs, and maybe it's just a matter of just getting back to the fundamental basics. 1 and 1 still equals 2. I don't care whose book you read, how you look at it, it's 2. And why we find creative ways to find out how we arrived at 2 is beyond me. It's a waste of time. Okay. However, there are a couple pointed questions. Is there any overcrowding in our schools here in the city of Lake Worth?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to know what is so difficult about determining, what the capacity is. If you're 50 over, 100 over, whatever the case may be, why these children are not being placed in schools that are not at capacity?
We actually brought someone from our boundaries office here to answer the question specifically, because I thought you guys might bring it up.
From not an administrator, my question is why is it so challenging just to say, okay, we've got a group of 50 or 100, 200, whatever it is, they got to be put in, South Olive or.
It's a boundary change, and it's a policy that follows it. Board you have to come up with different proposals to present to the board to take action, and a lot of that involves community involvement to have voice. So we are looking at that for Highland at this time to look at the different options of where we can send the students.
How often do you change or look and adjust boundaries?
How often? All the time.
So it's a
continuous
fluid process.
Correct.
Okay.
It hasn't been done in Lake Worth in a while, though.
Oh, well, that was going to be my next question. I think maybe that should be a top priority.
It is being worked
to
out.
get some of these children that are in overcrowded situations in a less crowded environment. We also mentioned parents. What are we doing to encourage parents to get involved? And then free and reduced meals. According to my calculations, out of 3,497 children in our elementary schools, only 169 of those children are not on free or reduced meals. Only 169 out of 3,500 children. Okay, there's no crime about being poor, but to the comment that I think Commissioner Robinson made, and I almost asked you a couple of years ago when you gave a presentation, and you gave an excellent presentation, by the way. In my mind's eye, why can't we come up with some way of approaching the Department of Agriculture and say, look, let's dispense with all this. We're going to feed all of our children.
Oh, I want to. It's
Okay.
on my list.
Just feed them all. Eliminate the bureaucracy that goes with it.
So the way that we would do that.
We just had a meeting about that. We are actually looking at some areas to pilot that in some of our schools.
Right. And the other thing is, as you mentioned too, when you get to middle and high school, those numbers drop just a little bit. So you have an average of 95.17% of the children in Lake Worth are on free and reduced meals. And that number is 95% when you get to the middle school. And the reason it's dropped just a little bit is because as children get older, they become more self-conscious and more reluctant to step up. Okay, and hence they end up going hungry. There is no, as much as I'm disappointed in some of our education successes or whatever, there's no excuse for our children to go hungry. None whatsoever. Now, I would ask you that, I would beg you to find a way to make sure that every one of our children goes home, not feeling hungry or, they can't learn if they're hungry. Again, I started this conversation by talking about the root causes, and I want to focus on the root causes of our challenges, not the symptoms. Okay? Absenteeism is a symptom. It's not the root cause. Okay? So, again, to go back to saying, who can say no to children? None of us can. But I have to tell you that I have to be responsible. And as much as I want all these things that we can do. I want to see a mentoring program reinstituted in the schools. I'd like to see our city staff be able to go and read to the children. I want to get back to the things that mean something. And there's not just us writing a check and handing it over to you folks to add to your $3 billion budget. That we're, like you said, I think you said it well. Tallahassee likes to see things. Well, maybe in this case, we won't give you the thing. Well, the thing we'll give you is us.
That's good.
Us, our staff, our hearts, or whatever. And so, with that said, I don't have a whole lot more other than I really would like to see, before we consider any funding for any programs, if the school board can come up what characteristics that you can point to that are consistent with all your successful schools, and then bring it back to us and show us where the difference is here in the city of Lake Worth. And it doesn't have to be statistical necessarily. It could be anything like parent involvement, or it could be, I don't know what it would be, but there's got to be some other metric other than just attendance. Okay, and the scores that from some of these testings that you folks don't particularly care for. And that's really what I like to see. Is that something that's doable?
Yes.
If that's doable, we can maybe get something from you. I appreciate that. And I want to thank you all for coming, and I assume that all these folks here that I've never seen before, how many of y'all live in Lake Worth?
I do.
You're in the city? Aha. How many live in the city of Lake Worth? No. Let's try this one more time. How many that are with the school board?
Or the teachers and principals.
Or the teachers live in this city?
Or
Let the record show only Erica Whitfield lives in the city.
Yeah, Commissioner Hardy count.
No. I'm talking about the school district. I want to talk about the
He's a
administrators.
district employee,
I'm talking employees. I'm talking principals. I'm talking administrators. I'm talking school board staff. The only person I see in this room, and there are probably 20 or 30 of you, is Miss Erica Whitfield. Thank you.
Yes. Forgive me. I felt that Dr. Whitfield in particular identified some evidence-based factors, right, that go into the performance not only of our students as like human beings, but also like the performance of our schools when you talk about the school rating system, which I think anyone hates, right? Like anyone with a brain hates the way that we run a school system. I'm a teacher. I've had that stress, right? I get that it sucks, right? Okay. So one of the things that she talked about, and I don't view attendance as entirely a symptom, right? Attendance goes into how our students perform. If they're not there, they can't learn. If they can't learn, they can't grow as human beings. And they also cannot perform on these measures that are like really, really important to the city's ability to attract residents, right? And I understand that it appears to be a small difference, but when you have a school, for example, and I just want to, North grade is 2 points, not like 2 percentage points, but like 2 actual points, quality points or whatever it is that it's called, from a B, right? Highland Elementary is, depending on whether you believe the 78 number or the 81 number, is 4 to 7 points from a B. And so when your kids are coming to school, you know, when for example, you have an absenteeism rate that's 2 full percentage points higher than that of the districts, that could be your 2 points right there, right? That could be your 2 points right there. I, as a teacher personally, I missed my department's goal by 1 percentage point, and the difference was not only my ability to teach and my growth as a teacher, which I can always get better to teach, but I had 2 students that literally just did not show up to school. Both of those students were extremely intelligent, like literally, I am afraid for them when I think about how intelligent they are and about what it is that they're doing when they're not in school, right? So if those students just show up, I as a teacher hit my 65% goal. How many teachers in Lake Worth have that exact problem? I can guarantee you that there's at least a handful of teachers or a handful of departments, which they add up to. And there's at least maybe a school, maybe 6, that could have potentially reached their goal if really smart students would have just shown up. So if I don't view it as treating a symptom if we address absenteeism, because absenteeism is really important to the performance of our students as human beings and to the performance of our schools. And even if it was just a symptom, all I know is when I get a cold, I shoot Afrin in my nose, right? Like I know that it's not going to make me less sick, right? Like it's not actually going to attack the infection that I have in my body. But I do know that my head's going to feel better and I'm going to be a little less congested. And the thing that I'm focused on, which is how I feel, will be different. And in reality, that's all that matters, right? So if there are a bunch of symptoms that we can attack separately to address some of the issues that we have at our schools, I think we should definitely address those. I think, you know, one thing that we have to remember, and you hit on it, Commissioner Maxwell, the legislature does like to see things. This legislature especially does not like recurring appropriations. And so, you know, whatever it is that we ask them for, it has to be something that we can use in 1 year that can really make a huge impact. And then on the capacity front, that's a politically fraught issue, right? And so, you know, what you guys probably can't say, or maybe won't say in public, is that when you talk about literally moving children from one school to another school, that becomes an issue, right? Because there are parents who, for some reason, think that some public schools are really good for their children and some public schools are not really good for their children. And when they get drawn into another district that might have some different demographics, that parents get up in arms and they show up to meetings, and these parents tend to vote more than parents who have other issues, right? And so there are political issues there, which is why across the county, you know, the school boundaries could probably be tweaked more than what they are, but there's probably some political opposition. There was one other issue. Okay, so capacity at Highland Elementary. Can we just get like an update as to, first of all, what exactly is happening? Like what exactly is the planning department recommending to be done with Highland Elementary as far as capacity? My personal recommendation was to basically draw in the west, like basically draw the boundary in so that kids who are in the far western edge of that boundary, which is near to where I live, but it's actually in Palm Springs. I basically want to make the boundary smaller. So like the boundary should move from Congress closer to I-95. And I just want to know what actually is the recommendation there. And I spoke with Mr. Link on the phone not too long ago. So is there an update that we could receive there?
Test. Hi. Yeah, it's nice speaking to you a couple weeks ago on the process. So we're right now exploring relief for Highland Elementary as well as South Grade. Highland is currently the third most overcrowded elementary school in the district. South Grade is the fifth, based on the current October enrollment count. So we're looking at working on proposals to relieve Highland and South Grade, potentially with Barton as the relief school, because Barton is an under-enrolled school, and we're exploring other nearby schools as potential options, and we're looking to hold that first. As Mr. Oswald mentioned, it's a community process, so that needs to go through our advisory boundary committee in a number of meetings, including community input meetings. So that first meeting right now the likely date on that meeting is November 15th.
Okay.
So that will be when the first proposal will be introduced to the advisory boundary committee. The committee will review that proposal and then vote whether to recommend that proposal out to community input, in which we would host that meeting at likely a local school in the Lake Worth area.
Can I help you a little bit? What I can tell you is that you will probably receive very little opposition from people who are here in Lake Worth if whatever boundary changes you suggest, okay, do not shift kids who are currently walking to Highland Elementary to what they consider to be their neighborhood school, and that's my district, that's the Tropical Ridge neighborhood. Those are the kids who are living east of I-95, between I-95 and Dixie Highway. Most of them are walking straight to that school. We will have a very real problem if those kids are drawn into other schools. But if there are kids that are being bused from, for example, where I live on the other side of I-95, to this school, I can tell you that folks in Lake Worth will have much less of a problem. Maybe they won't have any problem with these kids who are being bused to Highland being bused to a relief school, whatever relief school it is that you deem worthy. If it's possible to come up with something like that, I think we would very much appreciate it. The other thing, we talk about school capacity, and we talk about the ability of the school district to respond to capacity, to overcapacity, right? Like, you can't not talk about our really, really terrible, no good legislature, right? So like, basically, we talk about funding, right? So like, we say that funding hasn't been cut, but I don't know what to call it. I really don't know what to call it when 1,000 people a day are moving to Florida. And when the vast majority of these 1,000 people a day that are moving to Florida are moving right here to South Florida. And the legislature basically tells the school district every single year that the fruit of this population growth, which is increased property values, you cannot partake of it, right? That's what our legislature has told the school district. Every single year, property values increase. And that increase is symptomatic of increased needs on the school district's part. And every single year, the legislature has told the school district that you cannot touch that extra property value, because the legislature is not only against tax rate increases, they're against the idea of a growing government, even though the population is growing. So when you complain about the school district not being able to respond to capacity because they can't build more buildings, or they can't bring modular construction to the schools, so they can't bring concretables to the schools because that stuff's expensive, but you also don't want to complain about the legislature, and you don't want to call their tax decreases what they are, tax decreases, then I don't know how else to put it. And in addition to that, the school district is literally trying to build more schools right now. And our wonderful Department of Education has basically told the school district that you have to redraw every single boundary in the district before we give you a single dime to build another school. So you can't talk about capacity without talking about our terrible no-good legislature, and without talking about our wholly inadequate Department of Education in the state of Florida. And so I take offense to that, because I experienced it personally as a teacher. We had a day of school last year in Roosevelt. We had to cancel a day of school because our AC went out, right? Our AC went out. Our AC goes out because we don't have any capital dollars, because charter schools get to dip into our capital dollars, right? Which educate 10% of the students, they get 90% of the funding last legislative appropriation cycle. The other thing is, can we talk about South Grade Elementary? We identified, I can say like that sounds really official, on the phone with Mr. Link and the other, and I'm really terrible with names. There was another person I was on the phone with. Can you tell me who that was?
Right, Kristen Garrison.
Kristen, okay. We were on the phone and we were looking at South Grade Elementary, right? And Craig Frost, who's the Neighborhood Association president of Pineapple Ridge, who works very closely with that school, was telling me that he was wondering, why isn't the school district doing more with the property that they have immediately west of the school? It's like across K Street, because there's basically a parking lot and there's an empty parcel And I think there's maybe another empty parcel to the north.
Yeah.
And he was asking me, why aren't we doing more, can't we put some concretables there? And it was basically said, well, you can't have kids crossing the street, right, to go back and forth between their schools. And so the idea that I came up with and that we discussed very briefly over the phone is there was one last parcel on that block that faces South Grade Elementary that the school district does not own. And it's literally one property, right? So if the school district buys that property, or if the school district, with the help of the city of Lake Worth or what have you, in some kind of way, if we can help you guys, or if you guys can buy it or whatever, if that property gets bought, that last property on the block, then we, the city commission, can give the school district that last stretch of K Street. And K Street terminates anyway at South Grade Elementary, right? So we can give you that last stretch of K Street, and you guys can make the school literally the whole block, both where it is, and you can take the street and build on it and do whatever it is. Is that something that could be seen as a way to provide relief to the overcapacity there? If you guys had the money to build something, if you just had that property so that we can give you the street?
As former principal of South Grade Elementary, I've always wanted that, so.
Oh, you got, okay. Yeah.
So, yes, I think we can.
Can I ask a question to follow up what you're saying? Oh, it's not for me, it's for Mr. Link. Can you address the, how long it takes for a boundary change to affect the school?
Right, that the process begins the school year prior to when that change would take effect. So if we our intent is to bring the proposals this school year, and those changes, if approved by the school board, would be implemented. ABC recommends study to the superintendent recommends study to the school board, and the school board votes to approve. If that all occurs, it would be August 2019, next school year.
So are you saying that if the ABC does what we want them to do, and if the school district if the school board, we have two members here, takes that recommendation and acts on it in a way that we would like them to, that basically by the beginning of next school year, the problem could be solved?
If we've got to find funding for the concretables.
Well, for a boundary change.
Oh, the boundary change.
For boundary change.
Yes.
Right, the boundary change portion, yes, that would be implemented.
And that's Highland
for
Elementary.
next. Highland and potentially South Grade.
Okay.
I know, the challenge with capacity, I know is the Florida Department of Education is oftentimes is getting that approved, to add capacity to various areas of the county, that oftentimes requires DOE approval.
Yeah.
So we've been having challenges garnering that approval from the state. So that's probably our number one challenge right now is approval from DOE with adding capacity. So that would be something we can explore, but the approval from DOE is, that's
Are
historically
they
been a challenge.
educators?
Hold on one
in
second.
Department of Education?
Okay, guys, I just want to keep it, we had scheduled to make sure that we told everyone from the school board we had an hour and a half for the meeting. We're over after 2 hours now, so I just want to make you aware of that. And I'd like to, I've seen hands up, and he needs to leave. Do you mind?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor, and then Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so South Grade, yes. I have a problem with kids can't cross the street when they're walking to school. So whoever made up that rule, I think we need to go back and talk to them, because even if you can't buy the land, you have land, let's figure out what we can do. It boggles my mind that they can't walk across the street. They do it in every other state and they're walking to school. So I think we need to address that on a bigger picture. Yes, we need to, maybe that's an ask. A specific ask is concretables, not only for South Grade, but for North Grade. North Grade has a lot of land that concretables can go on. They also need help with parking there.
I think you're talking about Highland.
I mean Highland, I'm sorry, North Grade, Highland. So maybe both of those are specific asks for Tallahassee. One-time funding, specific asks. I have so many other things on my list, from parents to, I have my card here. I want to sit down and I've sat down with a couple of you, but I'd like to sit down and have bigger conversations on a sidebar, because, we're running out of time. But maybe these are some of our asks, our specific asks, as we're looking at going soon. So we need to kind of get that done soon, because we'll be going to Tallahassee soon. Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much, and I apologize, I do have to leave. But I wanted to go back and reiterate my commitment to a collaborative approach to, addressing some of our concerns here with or our needs in the schools. And there was a reason why I asked about how many people in this room live in the city. In years past, I have proposed incentive, tax cuts, some sort of incentive package to induce teachers to move into the city and for first responders to do that. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back again. If we can put together a package of incentives or collaborative efforts, don't necessarily mean we're gonna write a big check, but these are the little things we can do that don't necessarily cost us hard dollars. So there was a reason why I asked that. I think it's important that, if we want our teachers to be the best they can be and all that, I think it's important they live here too. Okay, and not to commute here to the city. And we have a lot of businesses to do that. That's one of our problems. We, for years, have been some sort of a bedroom community just for every aspect of life. We need people to live in our city and to spend their money in our city.
And we have one thing too, that we have a lot of new single-family homes, purchasabilities in the community, but we also have a lot of workforce rentals that are now high-quality rentals that are now available on the lake and all throughout the city too. And we've got another one coming up that's going to be on Dixie Highway, another nice. We've got a lot more options than we have had in the past too, that I think are more enticing for more inviting for families. Dr. Robinson, we're going to make a comment earlier too, and I didn't know if you still wanted to make that comment.
Well, I'll try to make it brief because we've gotten away from the topic. But first, let me just say, Commissioner Hardy, I want to learn to speak like you. And then, so let me just say this. So we talk about English language learner kids. The only reason that, the quote problem is, and I just want to make this point, Mrs. Whitfield made it, the test is in English. Okay, so sometimes the way the messaging goes, it sounds as if English language learning children are dumber, right? And not at all, because actually studies show if you speak 2 languages, you tend to be, quote, smarter, right? And so I just want to make sure that when we're messaging things, that we don't allow this image, because we do it, the district does it, but we don't continue, especially in Lake Worth, to let people think that we think English language learners are somehow dumber. But the other thing, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Maxwell left, because he said root cause several times, and so, which triggers me to say, we are having a Racial Equity Institute, December 3rd and 4th, and again, December 13th and 14th, because I don't want to blame the parents until we have some common understanding of all the institutional problems and barriers that are put in place for parents, right? And so part of the ultimate solution will be for each of us in our respective institutions to remove barriers.
Who should be at that Racial Equity Institute for those 2 days? If you had some ideas, who should be there?
Well, we've worked long and hard to get all our principals. Yeah, actually, everybody who calls themselves a leader should be there.
And what were those dates?
December 3rd and 4th, and again December 13th and 14th. Who's talking?
Commissioner Robinson, did you want to?
Yes,
please.
This is one of those meetings that had a start date and start time and an end time, not like our commission meetings.
Right.
But
they should.
I look forward to the next one. We are going to have another one. And I would like to mention, when housing was brought up, that teachers' pay qualifies you for public housing.
Correct.
If you can imagine public housing as being the backstop for teacher living is on a professional level, that shows you what our country respects education.
Well, we should inspect our public housing.
Quiet in the chambers, please. Thank
you.
You
guys should inspect our buildings.
Keith, did you?
Just one of the things we talked about was just that recognition piece. I wish Commissioner Maxwell is still here. The problem that we have also is just the turnover of teachers. So building that relationships, building that pride where teachers want to stay and live and work here is seeing, you all become part of that school. So in many of the other municipalities, I mean, that whole connection, that recognition, you know, we talked about, you know, whether it's a breakfast or just some kind of annual events, that these teachers know that you're in it with them. Yeah.
Well, that's what we started with, bringing the parade back. Well, and that's what I want to just
Yeah.
come full circle at the end here, guys, is that when I mentioned that earlier, is that we have a part to do and we have to get our involvement in. We have a very active neighborhood association group that I'm sure would instantaneously implement some projects into our schools and stuff. And we needed to get our house in order as a
Sure.
city for quite a while. That is now in place. Now I think that we've got that. Now we can expand that and start to do things. But I'm very grateful for all of you. I want to thank you all for being here today.
Really?
This is, when I started the Education Council, it was because nothing like it had existed and I wanted to give a voice for people. But this is now the extension of the kind of conversations that we need to have. And you're going to be seeing a lot of us.
Great.
I really appreciate all of you and for everything that you do. We're very grateful. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. Commissioner Robinson.
Yes.
Aye. Adjourn. Thank you.